let's
Yep.
let's
Okay.
get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. First of all, it's a Friday night, and I know our social calendars are very, very full right now. But thanks for doing something a little different. I'm very excited to be here. My name's Nick Markeviches. I'm the facilitator of Fox Valley Writers. We're normally non-COVID based in Messenger Public Library in Aurora, as you might guess from joining this feed. I just want to say a quick thanks to Jesse Alfelder, sorry if I mangled your name, and the entire board of trustees at Messenger Public Library and all the staff for making things like this possible for us. They give us space every other week to do our thing and let us have rooms to hang out in and give readings like this when we can do it in person, and have organized this wonderful event for us tonight. I'm just really happy to have something like this be possible. Again, thanks to any and all of you for tuning in here. I hope you're going to be entertained a little bit tonight, because that's the idea. A little bit quickly about Fox Valley Writers. We're just a group of people who like to write. We're of all different skill levels, from actively trying to publish to published to hobbyists to people who just like to do it and don't need a category to do it. The thing that brings us together is we all like getting together and kind of talking shop and just have a little bit of camaraderie, doing something that normally we kind of do alone and don't always think to ask for help on or figure out how to problem solve on, things like that as a group. But that's what we do. We get together, we hang out, we get some writing done all the time. Membership is always ongoing, drop in, drop out. It is free. You can either attend virtually like this, or again, in non-COVID times, you can come to Messenger Public Library every other Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're always there. There's no obligations, no commitments. Basically, it's there to help anyone who wants to write, find like-minded people and get improve their skills if they'd like. Feel free to contact me at foxvalleywriters@gmail.com. Or we have a Facebook group that you can join if you're interested in writing and joining up with us, even just to see what we're all about. And that's just look for Fox Valley Writers on Facebook. We do also publish. We've discovered the joys of self-publishing and enjoying a little bit of success with it. This is our latest book right here. Foxtails 8. It's obviously the 8th in the series. We do an annual edition called Foxtails every year. Basically, we write our work and then critique each other's work and help each other make it the best as possible, and then get it out there. You can search on Amazon for Foxtails 1 through 8. We also have other books you'll see on there. And I hope you'll check it out. You can get a Kindle copy if you like. Our next book, Foxtails 9, should be published this autumn, life and everything permitting right now. Any other questions? Like I said, foxvalleywriters@gmail.com. I've always got it on nearby me. I'll be happy to chat you up about writing anytime. For now, we're gonna get into the show. We've got 6 of us reading tonight. It's some of our members who have had a lot of success doing kind of fun things like we do in our meetings. We often write from prompts, and you're going to hear like the fruits of our labors, I guess I would call it, tonight, in a lot of cases. Things that started in our writers group one night and evolved or started and finished during our time writing and things like that. And I hope you enjoy. A little bit about me as the first writer tonight, sharing work. Like I said, my name's Nick Markeviches, and this is the way I write my bio. I am an old school weirdo in the tradition of Animaniacs, The Muppets, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I create unusual fiction through various means, including genre mashup, mad science, and the subtle alteration of reality via secret benevolent means. If you're crying BS at this point, you've hit the truth of me straight on the head. You can find out more about me personally at my website, which is theimaginaryplayground.com. I've got 2 pieces that I'm going to share with you today. Both of them came in the last year or so from just prompts that we did. We usually spend about 15 to 20 minutes working on one prompt and then another later on, just to get some writing out and kind of fulfill like the basic ideas of a writer's group. Sometimes it's terrible, won't lie to you. Sometimes it's okay though, and every once in a while you get nuggets like this one that come fully in 15 minutes, start to finish. Obviously, I think it's been revised a couple of times since then, but this started with 5 words that I shared with the group one night, and those 5 words: tickle, develop, delightful, enchanting, and avoid. I always tell everyone to use any way that takes their attention. And that's what everybody did, and this is what I came up with from it. Good evening, ladies and gentle weirdos. Welcome to what promises to be a memorable evening in the history books of competitive, non-competitive sports. What began as a fad 2 generations ago has evolved into the pinnacle of entertainment and a spectacle not to be avoided: the World Championship of Tickle Fighting. What makes this finale all the more delightful is the quality of the competition. In its 47-year history, World Tickle Fighting has never pitted 2 undefeated grandmasters head-to-head for the right to wear the championship belt. What an amazing thing, witnessing these 2 legends developing in parallel, night after night, week after week, year after year. It's not been seen before, and this commentator expects its ilk won't come again in our lifetime. Yes, it's a clash of distinct styles where tonight, Mr. Enchanting, Jerry Vanderstype, attempts to bring his 10-finger twiddle to bear against the one foe he's never defeated, Fugly Joe Bergstrom. These behemoths will collide with the WTF title on the line, winner take all here in Dubuque, Iowa. And we've got the call coming up after this. A teaser to a sporting event, just a fun kind of thing. This one's a little bit longer, and if you grew up playing any sort of involved role-playing games, like I suspect many storytellers did, whether it's paper games like Dungeons and Dragons or It's a Kind, or video role-playing games, especially those video games, this'll sound like something familiar from one time or another. It's called 16-Bit Hero. Johann, the gourmet chef, stepped forward. Ahead, the raiding party of 2 rebel soldiers and their 6 killer razor worms perked to attention. The officer of the pair, denoted by a purple skull patch on each arm of his duster jacket, cackled a sneering laugh. "Oh ho, what's this? A peasant hero?" Johann shook his head. His face remained grim. He was no hero. He was a chef, a man of delightful quiches and surprising soufflés. These renegades had detonated a bomb of pure mana in front of his restaurant. It's all gone, the raw, red part of his psyche reminded the shocked core of his awareness. Still, the memory played its slow, lurching loop. And the bomb had claimed most of the block in a cobalt bubble of energy. He had been away at the market, gathering his daily needs. He saw the detonation from afar. He heard the first screams when he rushed in to help, and he had encountered the first dead, the ones the mana had stripped down to the skeletons. And then it all played through again. Like everyone else, he knew remaining in the capital of the Idrian Empire during this so-called war for our children carried serious risks. But what was the alternative? Where would he go if he left? What use would he be to anyone in the ruined Western territories where food was scarce and survival a great open question? He might find work in one of the rebel war camps, but he would never support their cause. They were the ones who had escalated a passionate debate into violence. They were the ones who had cracked open the sealed tombs beneath the gray mountains. They were the ones who had traded their spirit for the power of the old magic. And they were the ones who had reduced his life's work to rubble in less than a breath's time. "Who attacks an eatery?" he bellowed over the background booms of war. From the pocket of his dirty and blood-stained apron, he pulled a broad, sharp butcher knife and a long, dual-pronged skewer. A jolt went through Johann. Invisible energy bounced between the weapons, making them buzz in his hands. Was this? No. It wasn't possible. And yet here he was, dual-wielding the tools of his trade. Could this really be a synergy? It would certainly explain why all those leftover orange XP spheres from other skirmishes were lately floating towards him. But if that's true, he thought, it means I'm the focus of a god. A chime sounded above him. Ba-ling! A golden light clung to his skin and clothes, enveloping him, filling him with potential. He saw the fight in terms of tactics, options, things to do with that energy. Each idea appeared full and ready in his mind, then vanished as another took its place, until finally he was compelled to a single irrevocable course of action. Johann bared his teeth and charged. He struck and whirled, danced and slashed as the deity known as the Player infused his body. Razor worms screeched as they were hewn in two. The officer's underlings stepped into his path and took a meat skewer to the face, one tine per eye. Johann rolled past him and wound up crouched before the officer, who stood stunned and wide-eyed, even as Johann rammed the knife between his ribs. The raiding party died as they lived, as an octet. 4 human eyes and 36 vertical-pupiled razor-worm eyes glazed over at the same time. 8 corpses vanished in the same disintegrating pattern of gray and violet light. They pixelated, as all things in this world did before death, and then they faded away. Just before the officer vanished, he yelled, "Curse you, gourmet! My master will eat your spirit like all the rest." Fanfare blasted through the deserted street, coming from everywhere, momentarily drowning out the more distant persecution of the war. Johann stowed his weapons in leather sleeves built into his apron. His right hand made a fist which pumped into the air over and over of its own accord. The music lasted 8 seconds before it faded like the Raiders. 8 glowing XP spheres appeared, floating like will-o'-the-wisps in the marsh where he often gathered mushrooms for soup. A burlap bag materialized at head height 3 paces ahead of Johann, then fell to the cobblestones with the familiar clink of coins. It was joined a moment later by a silver amulet with a glowing glowing green inlaid gem. Johann advanced to the items, driven by the will of the player. Both the bag and the amulet went into his apron pocket, whose capacity now seemed limitless. He would examine them later, if he survived. Johann peered down the street. His eyes narrowed as he spotted another raiding party. The omnipotent force of the player urged him forward. He was powerless to resist, but on the other hand, he didn't want to resist. Somewhere during his first ever battle, blind indignation had given way to a small but sure sense of righteousness. He'd never suspected this heroic streak lived dormant within him. Then again, he'd never before felt the touch of the player, let alone the irresistible tug of the storyteller. Never before had he witnessed the brutal malice of the enemy in person either. It bothered him in a way that stoked the new fires of determination burning in his heart. Johann turned a corner and discovered another raiding party. He took his eyes off them for only a second as he began to run. High above, a black airship floated beneath massive twin rotors. Blue mana bombs belched from its gun ports in clouds of ethereal cobalt smoke. That was where he was headed, where he could stop this madness. "Your master, eh?" he said. "Eat my spirit?" The gourmet cackled. "You already did, you scum. Now the bills come due." He drew his weapons and rushed toward destiny. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to remain here as I introduce everyone. I'll be in and out. But thanks for giving me a little time, too. It means the world to me to be able to read like this. Next up, we have Marie Adi, who may not be having a video because that's the way she prefers it. But Marie is an astrologer, meditation teacher, and member of the Fox Valley Writers Group. She has had short stories and poems published in 3 of the Batavia Library Writers' Workshop annuals. Commanding Influences and Poetic Music Makers are the 2 poetry books that she self-published. Marie has had magazine articles published in Quest, Satvidia Magazine, I'm sorry, Maria, if I killed that word, and DreamNetwork.net. Currently, she was writing a book about spirituality. Go ahead, Marie.
All right, thank you very much, Nick. Thank you everyone for being here today. This selection that I'm going to read is from our Foxtail 7 anthology called Tea Leaf Reading. He decided to pack a suitcase, get in his car, and drive. Traveling through 3 states was not what he had planned. It did help him to get some closure. The past year had been stressful. Lack of sleep and loss of appetite was starting to wear him down. He wasn't thinking too clearly. Things just kept piling up at work. His boss understood and gave him some time off. The inner turmoil he was feeling was hard to shake. He was concerned that she was okay and desperately wanted to know that she was fine. His usual drives involved fast-paced, concrete highways decorated with skyscrapers, billboards for casinos, luxurious cars, and hotels. Driving slow on gravel roads was a change of pace. The countryside was so beautiful. Cornstalks a mile high, the sky was blue with white fluffy clouds. He noticed an old trailer home on the side of the road. It must have been from the 1950s. It didn't appear to be well kept. An old pickup truck was parked next to it. A small garden with a variety of vegetables and herbs looked healthy and green. Something was unusual about this place. He had to drive closer in order to make out what it was. A hand-painted sign read, "Tea leaf readings, $10. He thought, tea leaf readings? Nah, I better get going. I thought they were only done in old movies. Those really exist? People actually still do them? What the heck? Intrigued, he pulled over and got out of his car. An old lady opened the screen door of the shack. She had her white hair pulled up in a bun on top of her head. The wrinkles on her face made her look like she was in her 70s. She wore a floral print dress and a white bib apron and black boots. He could see a shotgun leaning in the doorway next to the lady. She smiled and said at him and said, "Howdy, Sonny. How you doing? Don't mind a gun. I just want to be safe out here. I can tell that you're real friendly just by looking at you. I'm Beatrice. What's your name?" "I'm Joel, ma'am," with a solemn look on his face. "Nice. I like a man that talks spectful. Your mama done brought you up right." "He did. Spiffy sport car you got there. Is that a new model?" Beatrice asked as she moved the gun away from the doorway. "Yes, I just got it a few weeks ago. I like the red paint job. Nice and shiny. Does it run fast?" "Yeah, it goes 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. You do tea leaf readings?" "Yeah, I do. When's your fortune done?" "Well, are you busy?" "Got all the time in the world for you," she said as she opened the door further and motioned with her hand for him to enter her humble abode. He walked in, closed the door behind him. The interior didn't look any better than the outside. It did appear to be clean. It had a musty smell, and the aroma was like something sweet had been baking in the oven. A picture of the Virgin Mary was hanging on the wall. "I was about to have a cup of tea myself. Water's hot. I'll put it in the teapot so we can do this proper. Have a seat," she said as she removed some magazines and newspapers from the table and chairs. Joel walked towards the table and noticed a hound dog sleeping on the floor. Is the dog okay? Oh, heck yeah. Duke's old. He don't see or hear too good. Just kind of sleeps most of the time. Sit, take a load off, she said as she poured the hot water from the kettle into the teapot. Joel sat down and noticed several mismatched cups and saucers on the table. Go ahead and pick a cup and saucer. Joel picked a perfectly round white cup with roses painted on the outside, and a plain white saucer with a small chip on the edge. He handed them to her. I have some special tea in this plastic container. Take this spoon and scoop out as much as you want and put it in your cup. He got a heaping spoonful and dumped it into the cup. She poured warm water into the cup to make a concoction. Let it sit a bit. Need sugar or honey, milk? No, black is fine. I got some fresh sugar cookies I baked this morning. Want one? Yes, thank you. She handed him a cookie from the baking sheet on the stove. He took a bite. It reminded him of the cookies he ate as a child. He drank the tea. What kind of tea is this? Well, it's a variety of herbs that I grow in my own garden. You like it? Yes, it's good. He was trying to be polite. It tasted like mud with a hint of mint. Where are you from? She asked as she sat down across the table from him and fixed herself a cup of tea. Minneapolis. From Minnesota? What in the heck are you doing in Southern Illinois? Well, things have been kind of busy for me lately. I decided to take a break. I bet coming from a big city like that, you must have an important job. What you do? I'm a lawyer. Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. A big-time lawyer in my house. But I never see the day. What kind of law? Corporate law. When do we start the reading? Sorry, I just get so excited when I get company out of the blue like this. Sure, are you done drinking? Yes. Do I need to do anything? Well, take the cup of saucer in your left hand and ask your question. Don't say it, just think it. He did as she instructed. Is Mom okay? Turn the cup to your right 3 times. Turn it upside down. Place it in the saucer. Turn it to the left once. Tap the bottom of the cup with your pointer finger on your left hand. Turn the cup right side up. He meticulously followed her instructions. Now, just sit back and relax. She closed her eyes tightly. Joe could see her crow's feet appear in the corner of her eyes. She muttered, Sweet Mother Mary, protect us as I do this tea leaf reading. She opened her eyes and smiled. What? Did you get something? Joel could feel some type of energy enter the room. We are very protected. She took the cup off of the saucer and gazed into the teacup and its leaves. I can't wait anymore. What did you get? I see a woman in the tea leaves. She has shoulder-length hair, big cheeks, a broad forehead, a small chin and nose. Look, do you see? She showed him the inside of the cup. Yes, I see her. Beautiful woman. She's from your past. You're worried about her. It looks like things are changing for her. She wants you to go on with your life. It's my mom, he said with a big smile on his face. Are you close to her? We are. Well, she died a few weeks ago. My dad has been gone for 10 years, and she was the only family that I had left. Mom suffered so badly with cancer. I just want to make sure that she was okay. I miss her. So many people are worried about their dead kin. She is in a safe place and doing fine. What a relief. She does have a message for you. What? She is glad you're a lawyer, but she wants you to cut back on your work. You put in too many hours. She likes dancing, right? Yeah, she used to ballroom dance with my dad. Well, they're dancing in heaven. They want you to join a dance class and learn how to kick up your heels a bit. I'm not good at dancing. Well, give it a try. Your mom says that you will meet the love of your life in that class. You know, there are some nice dance studios near my home. Maybe I can look into them. She wants you to promise that you will. You talked me into it. Joel, anything else? No, this has been so helpful. He said as he stood up from the table. He pulled some money out of his wallet and handed it to Beatrice. Beatrice jumped right out of her chair. $200! God bless you, my son. She struck the bills in between her bosom. Thank you so much, ma'am, he said as he smiled and walked towards the door. I knew I could get you to smile. Wait. She grabbed some cookies and wrapped them up in an old newspaper. Take some goodies for the road. Pleased to meet you, Joel. I'll be praying for you and your pretty new girlfriend. Have a safe trip. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks very much, Maria. That's awesome. I love that story.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Nicole Tolman, who has aspired to be an author since third grade when she wrote and illustrated her first chapter book called The Heroic Magical Monster, followed by several others through her early years. Soon after that, she discovered the thrill of being published in school and local papers and a scholastic composition manual, and further studied English and creative writing in college. Soon after, she began writing novels and, once upon a time, questions and short informational articles for quizclub.com. She is a member of the National Association of Professional Women, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, and the Fox Valley Writers Group. She regularly attends writers' conferences and events, eager to continue learning more about her coveted occupation. When she's not writing, she can be found doing charity work, taking care of her husband and 3 kiddos, baking, she is dangerous with a spatula, but hardly ever sets off the smoke detectors anymore, and playing the piano badly. And of course, she's always working on her next novel. Welcome, Nicole.
This world, so aged, rotten, filthy, dying, infested with mere maggots called humans who breed, swarm, molest, destroy, and who mourn the quiet and peace that death grants us. And I am one of them. Outer darkness, hear my plea. Let me dwell in the black sanctity of your infinite palace. Lift me from this perdition I endure. Only then may I find tranquility. These are the thoughts of the heroine in my story entitled Jaded, thoughts that draw a powerful and sinister God to her. He watches her, craves her, desires her, until at last he makes a house call to her bedside in the dead of night. And just a little trigger warning here that there is mention of suicide. She wasn't exactly sure what had awakened her. The dim awareness of a faint whooshing sound was quickly receding back into her subconscious. Or maybe it was the night chill that had gradually seeped into the room, causing a small shiver to climb her spine. She groggily sat up and felt around her feet for her blanket. As her fingers found its furry thickness, however, she froze. She was becoming increasingly aware that the atmosphere in her room felt different, heavier. All at once, she realized she wasn't alone. Her breath quickening, she looked to her door, still closed as she had left it, and then proceeded to slowly, fearfully scan the room. When her bedroom window entered her peripheral vision, she detected a dark mass there, one that didn't belong. With a painfully skipped beat of her heart, she jerked her head toward the foreign shadow and saw a very large and distinct outline of a male silhouetted among the moon's glow. She drew in a sharp gasp, then opened her mouth wide to scream. But before she could sound a squeak, the shadow thrust his arm forth, and an invisible force harshly flattened her back against her bed. She tried to fight back upright, but was soon of the panicked realization that she could move nothing from her neck down. The black figure slowly approached her bedside. She once more tried desperately to scream, but could only emit a harsh whisper. "Tut, tut," a smooth voice chastised her. "What is all this racket you intend to make in these wee hours? You'll wake the dead." She ceased breathing, marveling at the way this voice seemed to fill her head, her house, her entire town, perhaps. It rattled her soul. This is no mere man, she concluded. The being walked, no, glided about the room, his manner at once businesslike. "My dear Jade, I have been called to this plane of existence to address an issue that has summoned my notice." He snapped, and a greenish-white scroll illuminated the darkness and swished open. "Let's see, rotten, filthy world, infested with humans, no respect for death." He paused. "I find I must agree with that assertion. Hear my plea, let me dwell, with me from perdition, only then may I find tranquility, etc." He snapped, and the scroll vanished. Such heavy, delectably disturbing thoughts. Why, to my expert ear, it does sound like you seek the God's will in extinguishing your existence. Am I correct? Her eyes, of which had been narrowed in deep thought, suddenly grew wide in understanding. One who could shake the earth with his voice, recite her innermost yearnings, manipulate her movements, and whose interest in the subject of death was quite evident. "Gods," she echoed in a whisper. "You're Hades, lord of the underworld," he offered, his head bursting into flame as he sank into a theatrical bow. As he arose, she exhaled sharply. His features now illuminated by the cold fire he produced, she drank in his black eyes, his bluish hue, his dagger-like teeth, his extraordinarily tall, muscular. Could it be considered a body? He was terrifying, but somehow she was not afraid. She stared, intrigued and captivated by this powerful, demon-like god only feet from her. He whooshed forward quickly, and upon blinking, she found him stretched on her bed alongside her, his head propped up by his fist. Her breath and heartbeat quickened, and he smiled. "My dear child, do I frighten you?" She swallowed and shook her head. He waved a hand, and she felt her throat at once relax. "No," she spoke aloud. "That is, unless, are you here to punish me? Do I offend Zeus with my self-hatred?" He snorted. "Zeus can kiss my pale blue butt. Offend him and you score points with me." Her amber eyes soon shone with hope. "Then are you here to take me with you?" He ran a finger lightly along her jaw. She winced. His touch was like ice and fire all at once. "I cannot," he answered apologetically. "Believe it or not, it is not within my godly jurisdiction to decide when you go." She bit her lip sadly. "I see." However, he rolled over and hovered above her, parallel to her, inches from her. "You do possess this power, should you choose to exercise it." She frowned for a moment, puzzled. Then realization dawned. "Do you speak of suicide? Ending myself? But then wouldn't I be writing myself a one-way ticket to hell?" Hades chuckled darkly. "Love, I rule hell, and in part, so can you." Me? What do you..." She paused, looking startled, then faintly giggled. "Surely you don't mean..." He drew yet closer, his hand tracing her slender waist and hip. "I mean, I intend to make you queen of my domain." She gasped softly. But Persephone is only with me but for a season. Her dear mumsy Demeter is way too prissy to step foot in the underworld, so Persephone goes to her for much of the year, only to ensure Demeter's selfishness doesn't wipe out all of humanity. He rolled his eyes. Mother-in-laws. Wipe out all of humanity, huh? A small, dark smile formed on her lips. Well, that would be a shame. Hades grinned darkly to himself at her amusement, then snapped his long fingers sharply. Jade twitched once and sat up slowly, discovering she could move of her own will once more. She swallowed nervously. How would you have me perform this act? She whispered. Hades' chest tightened with longing as her warm breath caressed his chin. Her face was so very close to his, he could have captured her lips with just the slightest move. It took every ounce of his divine will to suppress this impulse. Not now, not like this, he reasoned. She is a frail, tender mortal. I would only hurt her, badly. After a short moment of self-collection, he drifted slowly to his feet. There was a soft whoosh, and Hades grinned as he lifted a glowing white blade of the purest platinum into view. Work of art, wouldn't you say? He murmured, caressing it lovingly. What craftsmanship! Forged by Hephaestus himself. It can cut through skin and bone as if it were merely air. He scoffed. Of course. It is perfectly useless to me, but as they say, it's the thought that counts. He suddenly separated his hands, and the blade fell to the wooden floor with a dull thud, its tip buried between two planks. Oops. Jade's amber eyes dually reflected the bright sheen of the blade as it branded its image into her retinas, then her psyche. It seemed to vibrate with eagerness, seemed to beckon softly to her, and, her heart quick, she found herself kneeling before it. A devious smile spread across the face of Hades as he watched her chest rise and fall frantically, surging adrenaline bringing a becoming flush to her pale cheeks. He swooped low and leaned close. It'll be quick, he whispered. Be not afraid. I will take very, very good care of my new queen. His lips brushed her ear as he spoke, and she sighed shakily as fiery cold engulfed her ear. Still memorized by the glowing, unearthly metal before her, her eyes did not leave it as she said, I will do it. I will be yours to do with as you will. Crawling deep in his chest, Hades pressed his face into her dark hair, his need thick and his self-restraint thin. Not yet, he chanted inwardly. Soon, but not yet. Jade, I will be waiting. With a second whoosh, the Lord of the Dead vanished in a coil of blue flame. Will Jade keep her vow and become Hades' second wife? Or will she tell him to go to Tartarus? The full story can be found in our book entitled Lore and More, which can be found on Amazon. And now, as time allows, I will end my reading with a short, creepy little poem that I had loads of fun writing, which is also my contribution to our group's newest and upcoming anthology, Foxtails 9, coming soon to Amazon. Oops, let me find it. It's called Dolls in the Dark. Have you lain awake in the still dark of night and supposed that the world seemed so dead? It'd be fresh to admit there's no reason for fright when taps and creaks fill you with dread. It is silly, is it not true in the least, as you ponder the dolls on your sill, that one may have winked or her brow may have creased, and you laughingly dismiss a chill. Yet be certain that you are not conscious in bed as the witching hour glides in at 3 and casts its spell on porcelain and thread that impatiently longs to be free. Pray tell, were you blessed with the purchase of late of a sweet dolly named Annabelle, who covets your soul and at any rate doth aspire to send it to hell? Then there is Beth with her smile so sweet, but your souls, I implore, don't expose. For did you not feel her cold breath on your feet as she leans in to bite off your toes? Emily is most disturbed of them all when her curse turns her eyes a deep red. As she tortures and kills, tears of blood starts to fall, and she laughs softly whilst they are shed. You may find blonde Lily a trifle less dire, for she and blood do not quite mesh. Instead, you may waken to find you're on fire, for she so loves the smell of burnt flesh. Why, you're not even safe from your soft teddy bear as you hug him tight close to your ear. He'll weave in a whisper a ghoulish nightmare full of demons and murder and fear. They've plagued big and small as they busily play, and may entertain their every sin. They might cripple or stab, they might rip, gouge, or slay until daylight begins to peek in. So if you've awakened only recently to a dollar or two slightly askew, be sure that you treat them all most decently, or they'll come in the darkness for you. Thank you all for your attendance. Good night.
Thanks, Nikki. Great job. Up next, we have Susan Schubert, who has published 2 memoirs of trips to Europe. She has also won awards for poetry, short stories, and photography. One of her poems is on a mural in downtown Aurora, Illinois. Besides writing, Susan facilitates a writers group at a local library, sings in a rock and roll band, and cooks a mean Galway fish pie. She writes in her journal every day and specializes in poems about anything and everything. She lives in the Fox Valley. Please welcome Susan Schubert. Susan?
You're muted, Susan. Unmute yourself.
Well, I don't know if Susan is still in or if she dropped out. Let's move on. Sorry about that. Maybe she can.
I think she's the one that just says iPad.
Yeah, I'm not sure though. I can't force someone on. You know,
No.
if her video's on, I can only mute it. The only thing I can do is hope she comes back. All right, let's move on for now though. Dolores Derose was born and raised in Wisconsin, and after brief attempts at college and employment, followed her heart to Illinois, and a few years later, followed her theater troupe to Batavia. She found her vocation in life, as well as a reason to go back to college at the public library, where she has been employed for 20 years, a relationship that has lasted longer than her first marriage.
21 years now.
21. True love once again led her astray recently when she left Batavia and embarked upon her second marriage, but she is still at the library and active in the Fox Valley Writers Group. Under the name Dolores Witt Becker, her work has appeared in Foxtails 3, 4, 5, and 6, Phantasm's Door, and Variegated Ventures. Those are 2 more of our anthologies. And in the ghost story anthology Familiar Spirits, edited by Donald J. Bingle and William Pack. All of these publications can be checked out from the library or purchased through Amazon. Please welcome Dolores Derose.
So if anybody present attended our last reading, I started reading a story that appeared in Variegated Ventures, and I'm going to continue that story now. It's called The Story of the Story of the Story. The theme of Variegated Ventures was the quest to discover the truth about a legend. So it was already about writing stories about stories. But in the first installment, we met Kevin and Karen, who have been childhood friends since childhood, and recently became roommates after Karen broke up with her boyfriend and moved in with Kevin, just because she needed a place to stay. They have a little game they play that involves assigning magical powers to random household objects just to be goofy. And Kevin has been secretly saving them. They're in the middle of having lunch one day and have just declaimed the magical provenance of a spoon when a goblin and a couple of trolls appear in the living room and demand to have the magical items returned. and Kevin and Karen make their escape by means of a dimensional portal made out of mismatched chopsticks. They landed on their feet in soft moss in a forest glade almost unbearably green, dappled with shifting sunlight and perfumed with the scents of unseen flowers, underpinned by a note of healthy organic decay. Well, Karen muttered after a moment, this is not what I had in mind. Kevin recognized his mental happy place, the spot to which he retreated when physical retreat was not possible. Sorry, I guess I overrode your navigational instructions. This is my spot. Oh, it's lovely and all that, but where are we? No idea. It's just a patch of woods. I don't know what it's connected to. Where were you trying to go? I guess I was thinking more about getting out of there than going anywhere in particular. It was kind of vague, which told Kevin that she didn't want to admit where she'd wanted to go. Okay, fine, whatever. You've still got the stuff? She asked after a moment. Yeah. The box fit neatly under his arm, almost like an oversized squared-off football. Do you remember what all of this is? Kind of, I think. Karen mentally reviewed the inventory she'd begun in Kevin's kitchen only a moment ago. Some of it. Don't you? You're the one who collected it all. This is your little treasure chest. Hey, do you think that made a difference? Like if you just put those things back where they'd always been, they'd have gone back to being what they used to be? How the heck should I know? Are you saying this is all my fault? Fault? Kev, this is the coolest thing ever. I mean, yes, it's also messed up and we may die and never see our friends and families again and all that, but think about this. Think about it. What the heck else am I thinking about? He retorted. Okay, right. It's totally cool and totally messed up. Think maybe I slipped on the kitchen floor and hit my head and I'm actually lying in a hospital bed, beside which you sit day and night, refusing to leave my side for longer than the time it takes to pee. He broke off when she punched him, harder than was strictly necessary, in the arm that was still sore from the troll's grip. Sorry. I guess we start walking, eh? Or running, she replied as the goblin and the two trolls landed in the branches of a nearby tree. Ah! He made sure his grip on the box was secure with one hand, took her hand with the other, and hightailed it down the trail. His happy place, he discovered, did not continue on in the manner one might reasonably expect from a forest glen. It ended abruptly, and without visible transition, Kevin and Karen found themselves pelting down a stone corridor in what appeared to be a castle, or part of one anyway, as this also proved to be incomplete. They ran through several partial scenarios in rapid succession, indoor and outdoor, past, present, and future, including a heart-stopping moment of flailing around in frigid, airless space, and another in crushing and lightless ocean depths. Stop! Kevin gasped once they were back on solid ground again at the edge of the woods, or of some woods anyway. We can't keep going like this. It's just pulling random stuff out of our heads. I recognize some of those places from books I've read. Sooner or later, we're going to wind up in the heart of the sun or something. We don't even know what we're running from or why. Doesn't matter. We're the renegades. That's obvious. We run. Yeah, sure, of course. Kevin blew out his breath and paced around for a moment. Care, would it be so bad if we just gave them the stuff? Kevin, you don't mean that. We may be the renegades, but they're obviously the bad guys. Obviously? Goblins and trolls just showing up in your living room and making demands? Yeah, you're right. Just checking. Okay, so what do we do? Karen took the safety pins out of the box and linked them together. Wait. It wasn't long before their pursuers appeared, but it was long enough for Karen and Kevin to prepare the chain of safety pins. Kevin felt a little foolish throwing a 6-inch chain of linked pins at a creature who could probably swallow it without noticing, but the chain grew as it flew until it was more like battleship chain, with cuffs that Kevin would not have been able to lift. The goblin and trolls had just enough time to realize what was happening before it happened, and the unbreakable manacles of immobility did their job. Dang, I wish I'd thought of that before we went for that run, Karen observed with satisfaction. Come on. Suddenly possessed of a sense of direction and purpose, she set off down the hard-packed dirt road on which they found themselves, winding through a rolling grassland towards a distant city. The lack of shiny surfaces reflecting what appeared to be late afternoon sun indicated that it was probably not a modern or futuristic city. Kevin wondered how long the goblin and the trolls would remain imprisoned by the safety pins. It wouldn't surprise him if they had some kind of counter-talisman or a way of summoning others to come and free them. He and Karen weren't out of the woods yet, despite the forest dwindling rapidly into the distance behind them. It was just a game, Kevin kept saying to himself over and over as they walked. It was just some goofy stuff they did. It didn't mean anything, except now it did. And he and Karen were ankle deep in some major cosmic messed up stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to modify the language a little bit. Karen had her game face on, of course, pretending to be into it and nothing else. But Kevin knew her well enough to be able to see past that. She was scared, more scared than he'd ever seen her, possibly more scared than he was, because she took it seriously, he realized abruptly. She always had. It hadn't been a game to her, not entirely, not ever. She had always been after something. Where they were now, what was happening, this was what she'd been trying for. Maybe not this specifically, but something like this. All those silly games, she'd been poking around trying to find one that wasn't just a game, like trying to guess the password or combination or something like that, just by trying random stuff till it worked. Well, something had worked all right. Had it ever worked? Knowing how scared she was made him less scared, oddly enough. She'd never been a million years admit it, but she needed him to be solid, and he knew it. He'd always played along, falling into whatever role she required of him, and he wasn't about to stop now. If what she required was for her easygoing, semi-slacker best friend, not boyfriend, to turn out to have heroic companion inside his oversized t-shirt, then that was what she would get. He knew his part. He was the sidekick. Always had been, always would be, and he would be the best darn sidekick she could ask for. That was more or less what he'd promised her secretly and not in so many words long before any of this began. To be honest, he couldn't lay it all at her feet. He'd wanted this too. Something like this. Some adventure, some magical heroic quest. Something that would give him the tropes and tools to show her what he could not show her in the real world. What a dork, he chided himself. What a colossal dork. Stop that, Karen muttered, and Kevin realized he'd said it out loud. How long do you think it'll take them to get out of the inescapable manacles? How should I know? At least we'll be able to see them coming from a good way off. Kevin gestured at the terrain. The hills were gentle, and there were no trees or buildings between the woods and the city. Odd that, when he thought about it. Wasn't this land used for anything? It seemed to just be space between one place where things happened and another. Meaningless in itself. Sloppy writing, he thought. They set a brisk pace towards the city, which wasn't hard to maintain since the surface was reasonably smooth for something that wasn't actually paved. The thing was, they didn't seem to be going anywhere. On they went, and the city got no closer, although the wood now seemed to be just as far away in the other direction. Hang on, he said as the idea developed in his mind. He stopped walking. Why are we going to that city? Because we have to go somewhere and the bad guys are back in the woods. How do we know there aren't more of them waiting for us in the city? We don't know. Karen sighed and looked back behind them for the umpteenth time, then looked back and forth between the city and the woods a few times, apparently noticing the same peculiarity that Kevin had just been pondering. Why are we going to the city? She repeated slowly and quietly. Because there's no place else to go. But there could be, Kevin said as it dawned on him. This is neutral space, almost unformed. We can do anything we want with it. Come again? This gap between the woods and the city, it's nothing. It's raw clay. We can use it. Yes, I see what you mean. Karen looked at their nondescript surroundings with new appreciation. What do we want to do? We want to elude the buggers that are coming after us. Kevin glanced involuntarily at the woods, and get to the bottom of why they came after us. Yes, get to the bottom of it. The road curved around a hill that was slightly larger than the others, and Kevin and Karen saw a cleft in the rough rocks on the far side of it. Yes, just like that. Well done, trusty sidekick. Karen flashed the first smile he'd seen from her since before that lunch that already felt like ages ago. Then she was sliding between the boulders and into the cave, or tunnel, or whatever it would turn out to be, leaving Kevin to wonder if she had pulled that trusty sidekick right out of his brain somehow as he scrambled to keep up with her. It turned out to be a tunnel that sloped gently downwards. It was conveniently large enough, only just, for Karen to walk upright, and Kevin almost so. As they drew further from the entrance and a small amount of light it admitted, Kevin stopped and rummaged in the chest. There was something that was about light, wasn't there? He muttered. Ah, yes, here it is. He produced an old perfume bottle that still had half an ounce or so of something Karen had worn only because the ex-ding-dong had liked it. You remember the incantation? Karen rolled her eyes and laughed lightly at the same time, then took a deep breath and recited the chorus to their high school fight song backwards while Kevin shook the bottle vigorously. When she got to the final, or initial, go! He opened his fingers, and the tunnel was bathed in a soft, greenish light. Karen set off again as swiftly as the uneven floor and rough, close walls of the tunnel allowed. It was slow going for Kevin, since he was larger than she was in every dimension. He was falling behind and cursing his own bulk, but after a little while, the going began to get easier. He seemed to be having a better time getting through it. At first, he thought he had finally found something resembling a groove as opposed to his usual lack of physical grace. It took him a few minutes to realize that there was more to it than that. The tunnel hadn't gotten more commodious. He had become leaner and more agile. He noticed that he was no longer wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and gym shoes, and that led him to notice that he was no longer sporting a nascent beer belly either. His thighs felt strong and firm, and his arms, when he surreptitiously felt one with the other hand, were actually muscular. He'd been paying more attention to the tunnel than to Karen ahead of him, but he now observed that she had undergone a similar, though less drastic, revision. Her brown hair seemed fuller, curlier, longer, and endowed with smoky red highlights, barely visible in this light. Her costume, like his, now consisted of a stout canvas shirt, leather vest and trousers, and cuffed mid-calf boots. If this was the basic adventurer look, he couldn't help wondering if it would have amplified her chest, a la the usual male adolescent fantasy, or diminished it as a matter of practicality. After all, this metamorphosis had given her a plain and practical costume, not the pretty frilly crap that wouldn't hold up to 5 minutes in a real adventure. Still, that hair betokened the possibility that the rest of her might have become even more sexy than she already was. What the? Karen was looking down at herself, apparently just noticing the same changes that Kevin had just been noticing. She turned around, and the look on her face told Kevin all he needed to know about the changes to himself that he couldn't see at the moment. Look at you, she almost drawled, and he almost didn't hear her as he discovered the answer to his curiosity about her updated endowments. Her vest was cut low in front and supported a promontory of firm, round flesh that the partially unlaced shirt strained to contain. She glanced down at her own cleavage and gave him a wicked smile, and he winced and looked away. Well then, at least I've still got pants on. Kevin almost choked as she turned and continued walking, and he told himself that what she meant was that she was glad the transformation had not given her skirts. The slope of the tunnel got steeper until it was all they could do to keep their feet under them. Suddenly, Karen slid on some loose gravel. She landed on her butt with a shriek, went sliding down what was now a chute. Kevin scrabbled inside the chest, pulled out a length of yarn that had been too long to get rid of and too short to use for anything, and shouted, "Tie me up! Tie me down!" and cast it out as far as he could. It became a rope that hung down the shaft, suspended in midair, and Kevin saw a jerk that he hoped meant Karen had caught it. He tried to climb down it, but it was not easy while keeping hold of the chest and the light. Finally, he tried a controlled slide down the rope, but it ceased to be controlled before he reached the bottom, and he landed in a heap after the end of the rope slid out of his hand a good 10 feet from the end of the descent. The landing was hard and jarred the light out of Kevin's hand despite his efforts. The bottle bounced a few times, partially illuminating the large cavern into which they had fallen, and went out. The box, which had taken on the rounded top shape of the miniature chest, came open, and something fell out and shattered. Probably the cup and or the mirror, although neither of them could see the slightest glimmer of anything except their own retinal afterimages. Ouch. Next time we want to get to the bottom of something, let's use a different metaphor. Yeah. Kevin gingerly took his own inventory and decided he was bruised but unbroken. Are you okay? I think so. Pretty much. You? Nothing a pint of good brown ale wouldn't fix. Kevin realized abruptly that their escapade had left his throat dry and tongue dusty in a way that mere water in the standard issue leather flask slung over his shoulder would hardly assuage. I hope the obligatory congenial roadside inn will have materialized by the time we get out of here. Well, we seem to be making this up as we go, so I suppose it just did. And if you want to find out how Kevin and Karen finally get the answers to what's been going on, pick up Variegated Adventures from the library, order it from Amazon, or I might very well read the rest of it at the next reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. I'm looking forward to hearing the whole thing out loud again. It's been a while since I've read it. We have lost Susan, unfortunately, to the evil curse of technical difficulties. She sends her regrets, but says we're going to make a promo video for her, and she'll put up a link somehow that we can get to so we can see her reading from her work as well. So I liked the story that she had, and I wanted to see if she was betting she was going to laugh in the middle of it because she kept cracking up in practices. We have one final reader tonight, and that's Rachel Bauer, who grew up in a small community of coastal California, feeding her hunger for words and stories as she looked up at the patches of sky just visible between the boughs of the redwoods. She majored in English and psychology at Knox College and now lives in the small community of Elburn, Illinois, tucked amidst the whispering prairie grasses and accompanied by two furry feline partners in crime named Sunny and Liza. She writes short stories and a spattering of poetry about lucid dreams, sentient characters, modern-day myths, and not-so-distant worlds still awaiting discovery. Her work has previously appeared in Variegated Adventures, Lore and More, Foxtails 7 and 8, and coming up soon, Foxtails 9. Please welcome Rachel Bauer.
Thank you, Nick. So I'm going to be reading a couple things tonight. The first one comes from Foxtails 8, which is one I believe some other people have read from tonight. So this is a collection of 4 poems, collectively called The Lost Year Cycle. The first one's called Winter Sinks In. You begin to slip away, skim fluidly as the light that glazes over every tree. It's beautiful, you'd agree back then, but very brittle. The trees look downcast, says the ghostly breath caught between my lips. They know how to survive, you'd shrug, shouldering out of committing too much even then. I think maybe it's me on thin ice after all. I never knew how to be so chill. The melting paints it all with a thin, watery haze, as if the whole world is strewn with tears, and that's how I lost my center, spun out among the light-strewn whitewash I've painted our past in. You understood the dynamics instinctively, grasped how to let go when someone flailed helplessly and went down on their bleeding knees, staining snow. The trees know nothing but hardship, and there is such a savage beauty in their frosted shade and needling boughs cast down. By then, you were already retreating back, seeking warmth and shelter elsewhere, and the words keep ebbing on my lips. I'm sorry I fell. The fall. Terror-driven, my eyes climb, scale the trunks like turrets and reach the extensive arms of the tree, rending rivulets and breaking open the cloudburst sky. Drenched, my thirst is slaked when my eyes fall on your smile, that grin which tugs like puppet strings to upturn my own lips. We are here together. That's a dangerous possibility, and I'm still dizzy with the heights of what my heart whispers, this gray feeling punctuated by new growth. Each tree knowing something too old to speak, each circling something within so infinite that I feel terribly unsure about trying to splice it open and counting upon all those layered years. So I turn back and find you, open-armed, unbound and loose, with uplifted face, embracing the whole of this particular moment. And since I am here too, that implication settles into the soil and creeps beneath our consciousness. Thunder thrums out of place, chasing the lightning flash of my recognition of fear and of falling back like this to you. Warmer days. Light springs forth and pools into the August night, painting a path to your feet. Behind, the steeple rises and the bell garners favor with the crystal stars. and the Bible pages are smoothed beneath their blackened covers. People pass in twos, or at most threes. You stand alone, pasted in the doorway, swimming in electricity. Inside, the skimmed glass bulbs and fluttering wires hum something earnest and sudden in their grand chandelier casings, too far for me to hear. But you hearken above the urgent clang of the bell that says it is finished. I stand star-crossed and lost, even among the glittering constellations, holding my own heart. You have no needs, leaning easily into the doorframe and the cool capacity to question everything. I know I rely too much on broken faith, the way that winds into the night past the tree that blooms out its last petals, unseen in the dark. I still want to be like that, grand and delicate, a presence worthy of your witness. Instead, I am cluttered and still and racked with guilt. My feet are frozen, in spite of the staccato-strung sultriness that sings out the narrow way toward a place of rest. Some slender cord jangles and stretches back to you. I want to turn back toward that light beyond reason, to play accompaniment to your cynicism, for you don't ask the pastor to learn, but to persuade. You already have me, but that isn't enough. And I, in turn, know our friendship should be sufficient. That knowledge rattles my ribcage and aches in the corner of my eyes. Ask, and you shall be given, but I am a sinner still, and not the one who will ever have your love. I just wish, all the same, you would turn around and step out into the dark with me. And finally, a rite of spring and passage. When the lively music collects in the hallway, I am still walking amidst the shadows. The powers that be have left it charcoal-edged, smudged and scant, a suggestion of a school more than a reality. You wonder if it's to manipulate us into feeling some romanticized sense of atmosphere or simply to save on the electric bill. So your smirk carries my laughter in the dark, even though I know it shouldn't. Inside, an abundance of light, gold-touched, sweeping the gym floor clean of prior context. I loved how you formed the words like that, precise but offhand, feigning it was easy. You look at ease, slouching into the noise, molding the cut of your suit into something dapper but rebellious in the crimson top and chopped off sleeves. I need to breathe, you said. I feel at sea, battered by noise, and my hem a sail that catches everything. The tide of the night shifts, first lively percussion, then slowed seductive sweep. The couples are in arms and you tap your foot. The strobe has you here, then gone, here, then gone. Even as we pinwheel apart in the crowd and you eclipse entirely out of sight, I can see how it will be. You have always been so easy to love, wittingly or no. I wanted you to know your hands could have a rest in mine. You could drop the pretense. If you wanted, I would know when to let you lead, when to stand on my own 2 feet, and when even you might need to lean a head on my bared shoulder. I would have danced all night with you, if that's what you wanted. You didn't. This has been nothing but a misstep. I need to breathe too, but the air collects in silent gulps in my hollow feeling chest. My hands are empty and my dress sags as I follow the narrow path of scuffed floor to the exit sign, red and significant. I let you go in the choked sobs that wouldn't come, in the chill air that escaped the doorway and the heavy sense that I will never know how it feels to dance again. So that's the first one. The second one I was going to read tonight is a short story, and it comes from Variegated Adventures, which is one we've also heard from tonight, I know. So this one is called In Spirit. They say where there is water, there can be life. Blinking on for the very first time, my camera sweeps the surface of the world. Ruddy, dusty soil, that iron-rich color which gives Mars its red hue in all the photographs from space. And here, in clear detail, the strangely undisturbed rounded rocks, scattered as if they had fallen from the sky. They see 100 people, a handful on the scale of Earth, leaning closer. They sweep the seemingly barren land, spellbound and alienated. My wheels rattle as they turn across the rugged soil. Grit winds its way into the bearings, slowing progress. A fine dusting coats the solar panels, shading the distant light of the sun. At night, the air is cold, thin, and without moisture. My mind flickers out into darkness, and it takes the team on Earth days to know why. They rack their brains, stubbornly and blindly. Their commands and coaxing injunctions move my arms, feeling the way across the sand and soil, stirring my mind back toward the bareness of the light. And then, all at once, a find. Cradled delicately between my instruments is a rock. A tenuous vein threads through it, shining dimly. Some ancient cord of water, perhaps, fragile but tenacious, forced its way through the weak stone, leaving a trace of minerals. Their eyes fill with sodium chloride and dihydrogen monoxide, echo of that same precious history. I follow the clues laid out like breadcrumbs. Hematite, the kind of steely black stone that can be carved in the presence of water. A subtle tracing of salt across the treacherous hill, a concentration too heavy to have risen there without the help of a fluid. Now, thousands turn their eyes. The first high-resolution image, frozen, sticks in their minds. I know they'll find it, Sasha says determinedly. She hugs the stuffed dog with one chewed, floppy ear close to her lips, but doesn't let it muffle her declaration. They'll find what? Her mother asks, distractedly loading the dishwasher. Life, she says simply, profoundly, on Mars. She can see the way it will be. She is only 8, but she has already heard the stories. We are not alone. People with other limbs from other worlds, landing in peace or laser-beamed conquest, or perhaps tiny bugs, microbes, wiggling in a steam vent or puddle or ancient unfathomable sea, crawling from the same chemical soup we found our origins within, inching with movement, creating anew, devouring, wasting, life. She traces such cycles in her textbooks, the circling arrows drawn from the life of plants that grow in her own world, cycle and recycle in the same way she turns the page, hungry and seeking. My wheels leave a rattling track, the only regular pattern easily discerned on the surface. One small step, one loose wheel. The hillside is formidable, loosing a rain of gravel and dust, sapping energy as the sun disappears behind its summit. I tilt my panels as high as they will go. A bare warmth flickers in me. Calculations dart through their minds. Where to rest, what mode to be in, how to make it last long enough to have a chance of knowing. Everything hinges on that. I know they won't find anything, Alejandro says, shaking his head decidedly. What makes you say that? His friend Tanya asks, casually kicking a stone from the curb as they cling close to the lamppost and wait for the traffic to clear enough to cross. He has to think that over. There are a lot of reasons why. Anytime the government decides to spend so much money on such a distant, inhuman task, it comes to nothing. They don't have their priorities straight or their heads on right. Such power doesn't lead to truth or much more than some bureaucratic, empty, mindless task. And there's the question, paradoxically, of simplicity. Is the equation for life really no more than a recipe? Some kind of energy plus carbon plus water. Who are we to say it's that simple, that such elements are all that is required, the only factors needed for such a miracle? But mostly, it is the feeling as he leans out toward the traffic, one hand clinging to the lamppost like a tree. It just doesn't seem likely, you know, he says. Why should we expect to find anything like us out there? The scientists' minds beat against the same question, turn it over endlessly, relentlessly. Water is all we know. 50% or more of our bodies, 71% of Earth. If we find it, maybe the rest of what we seek will follow. I reached the summit. It gives no clues, but the view is spectacular. The highest vantage of another world ever seen. Winter sets in, then the storm. Dust thrashes in a soundless, unbearably forceful gale, rocking me on my wheels. The sun is obscured for days, sapping vital energy. I cannot move, have no choice but to wait in the breathless dim until it passes. The scientists are left in the same way, with idle time to consider, to fret, and to contemplate as they grudgingly pursue other projects. In their daydreams, they see the image appear on their screens, the shape in a rock, some tiny regular marking, or, in their more daring moments, a fossil. Incontrovertible, victorious in the elation of a press conference, their names splashed across the pages of history, the celebrations of people around the world in the full knowledge that there is a richer, greater history of life than anything we have known, or something smaller, a glimpse, a clue, a pattern that could perhaps mean. A favorable wind knocks sediment from my panels at last. There is still time, a chance. They lean forward in their seats, their vision all the sharper for the images that have been dancing in their minds. Everything is coming up empty. Their arms move in mine, digging, drilling, collecting, documenting image by blinked image, hints of chemistry and sediment and the trickling, steadily increasing possibility of water. The question lingers, grows. Night is falling faster. My batteries are down to 60% power. I have been here for months longer than expected, longer than any of us ever believed possible, but perhaps it still won't be long enough. I edge forward. They let me more and more, trusting my judgment, my experience in this place they cannot see with their own eyes. I am very careful, picking my way with meticulous, calculated care. Disaster. It happens one day like any other. A patch of ground, so much like everything else I have traversed, conceals a secret trap. Unusually soft silt spins and gives way beneath me. A trial for freedom stirs dust. It is like quicksand, without a hint of water to show for it. Concerned faces, commands, pleading, suggestions. Try it backward, in circles. They make a mock-up on Earth, in a set that looks like a child's sandbox, trying to figure out how to break free. Another wheel gives out. The sunset glows a soft orange hue, vague reflection of the soil beneath. The sand stirs lazily in the occasional dust devil, the closest thing to motion now to be seen. My camera turns slowly, sweeping. I take more samples, lots of samples. There is no sign of water here. They know, after several months. They know there is no way to get me out, at least nothing that they can find. They cover it in positive, hearty words, but disappointment weighs in the long, increasingly cold nights. I am here. I am here, but my signal is weakening. They slump, head in hands, when they are alone. Sasha has forgotten for the moment her surety. She is more interested in the exploits of her teddy bear, who is tiptoeing a thin, tight line across a dusty windowsill in her house. Tanya dries her hands late at night and looks up once, considering the romantic nature of the stars. She remembers Alejandro's words and wonders, stilted at heart, alone. There is no conclusive sign, no miraculous evidence that life was ever here before. But it is here now. It is here, clinging in the thin atmosphere and the rocky, cold silence. Here in my wheels that have turned over the soil of a place that no human foot has ever stepped, but where your human hands have touched by shaping me. Here, in your billions of eyes, turn to look at a single image of a place, held collective in your minds, imbued with the twinklings and variations of imagination, bound together in one shared moment. Here, where you have reached through my arms, seen through my eyes, traveled in my tracks. Your questions are unanswered, and you will get no signal back from me anymore. But you are still here, breathing life into this place, and this thirst unquenched will drive you onward. For where there was water, there you shall bring life.
Thank you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's everybody for our show tonight. I want to just take a quick second and say thanks to all of you who took a little time and tuned in on the Friday night. I know our social calendars are very full right now, but it still means the world to myself and the others here that you would honor us with a little bit of your time. So thank you. If you'd like to read more of our work, again, Amazon, search for Foxtails, go to the library whenever you can next, and check out our books from Messenger Public Library. While you're there, please say thank you. What's that?
Batavia has some of them too.
Mm-hmm. While you're at the library, thank a librarian for being there. They're doing their part in all of this to kind of help with all of us and, you know, trying to figure out what's right and wrong. So I'll just say on that note, everybody keep staying strong, keep trying to find new things to do like this. I'm really enjoying being able to see some faces tonight without a mask on for a change of pace. So
Seriously.
yeah, it means something right now. I wish it didn't have to be this way, but it is. So Jesse, thank you for hosting tonight and getting everyone registered and settled in and everything. And I think we're going to do another.
It was good to hear some readings.
Yeah, I think we're going to do another one of these in October too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're here and you'd like to hear more, tune in. We'll probably be reading from our new book pretty extensively by then. And again, thank you for your time. See you again sometime.
See you, Nick.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.